In this video, I'm going to go through some biological benefits of sleep, which aren't necessarily to mean that you're going to do better at science in school or whatever, but more so the things that sleep does to your brain and the stuff that you don't really notice that happens. And there's certain processes that take place which mean that you can actually reap the generic benefits, such as, you'll be more productive, you'll be less stressed, and all that sort of stuff. Because that's the kind of stuff that people say. It's like, sleep's better for your mental health. People know that, but they don't know why that's the case, and I'm here to give you the why that is the case. That's sort of my job for some of the videos that I produce anyway. But I like to get from around 7 to 9 hours of sleep a night. That is what you're supposed to get, and as long as I wake up at the same time pretty much every single day. There'll be days where if it's a particularly late night, for instance, I'm going to say, okay, maybe I'm going to just turn off my alarm and I'll wake up probably maybe around 7 instead of waking up at 6:30 when I normally wake up. And if I turn my alarm off, then I'll probably wake up naturally maybe 7:15. So it's not like too much of a difference. Like some people will wake up for school at 7 and then they'll sleep into like 1, 2 on the weekends, which absolutely amazes me. I don't really understand how people are able to do that, because it must like tire themselves out in the day so much. It's interesting, but I go to bed at varying times every single night. My default is like 10, 5 past. I'll have to do stuff like, I'll brush my teeth, or I'll be doing a little bit of journaling or something like that, which may mean that it goes to 10 past, 15 past or whatever. But around 10 to half 10, I won't go to bed any later than half 10, because that means that it's going to be less than 8 hours. And I mean, I guess I understand you don't necessarily go to sleep the second your head hits the pillow, but it's probably quicker than you think. You normally, well, at least I've experienced this. When I sleep, if it's been more than 20 minutes, I'll be like, I'm not going to sleep. This is a bit weird. But I rarely get those kind of thoughts. And there'll be some nights on occasions where I'll just be a bit more restless. I'll wake up in the middle of the night, I need to go to the toilet or something or other like that. So it makes it sort of more 7 hours in some cases. But the majority of the time, I'm waking up to my alarm, I'm getting out of bed, and I'm starting to get ready for school. That's how it works. And if it's on the weekend, I'll just have a bit of a slower morning, but I'll still be getting up at 6:30. I'll still be having breakfast and showering and doing all that stuff at a pretty similar time. But it's just not necessarily as rushed as it is on a school day. But I like to wake up at the same time every day, because I just know that that's more optimal for my circadian rhythm and the way that my brain works and stuff like that. But for sleep itself, not necessarily your habits to do with sleep. One benefit of sleep is during non-REM sleep. REM sleep is rapid eye movement sleep, and non-REM sleep, there's about 3 stages. It's like light, deep, and like deep, or something or other like that. I'm not exactly too versed on how sleep works, but during this phase of sleep, your brain goes through these slow oscillations, and you sometimes get like sleep spindles as well, where it's like very quick, high frequency brain waves and stuff as well. And what occurs during these sort of spindles and oscillations is your hippocampus replays the events that have occurred throughout the day, and then it will store the long-term memories in the neocortex. And this is your long-term memory. Your neocortex and your hippocampus are basically where all your memories and long-term stuff is stored. And this happens during sleep. It doesn't happen during the day. When you're actually studying, you're not necessarily retaining the information. I know when sometimes you read a book, you can't recite every single sort of word that you've just read immediately after you've read it. But maybe when you sleep and you sort of come back to that sort of passage, if you're memorizing something every little and often, you'll be able to remember it, even though like when you've realized you've memorized the whole passage, and then 2 hours later when you come back to it, you're like, I can't actually like properly do that. If you try to do that in one day, you wouldn't be able to memorize it effectively. But when your hippocampus replays all the memories of you actually trying to memorize it, it becomes part of your long-term memory, and then the next day you'll be able to remember it much more efficiently. And that is basically how sleep is optimal for studying and for getting good grades in exams. I won't sacrifice my sleep to study more for an exam. I personally think that's a very stupid idea, and I see why people do it, because studying is the actionable thing. Why would sleep be better for studying? You got to study to actually like retain the information, but it is the sleep part and that actually is able to mean that you retain the information, because your sleep spindles don't happen when you're awake, they happen when you're asleep. Now, luckily, non-REM sleep happens when you fall asleep, so if you are only getting like 5 hours of sleep a night because you're studying a lot, you will still get some of these things, but because non-REM sleep and REM sleep, they occur in cycles, you're still going to be missing out on some of this sort of memory retention. So I recommend still getting the hours of sleep rather than sacrificing it for studying, because you genuinely, trust me, you will just be able to remember more. And while that's not necessarily all that exam's about, it means that it's still going to mean you're able to remember and memorize all the content of the stuff that you need to learn more effectively. The second thing that happens during sleep is mitosis and specialization of cells, specifically nerve cells, but I can guarantee that it's sort of to do with every single cell specialization. Most cells won't be specialized when you're awake and active, as I am right now. They're going to be specialized in 10 hours time when I'm asleep, fast sleep, REM sleep, non-REM sleep, whatever. And that's when the synapses are created. That's going to mean that your brain is able to fire more optimally. That's going to mean that problem solving and decision making and sharpness and alertness happen quicker because you have more of these things. When you don't have more of these things because they're not being created in your sleep, you get slow, you feel dumb, you feel stupid, and you feel like the world is just like weirdly sort of around you, just you're not really mindful and conscious to your existence. It feels quite weird when you're sort of sleep deprived. Everything feels a bit blurry and slow, and your reflexes are essentially non-existent because you don't have these sort of cells actually existing when they would have if you had a refreshing amount of sleep. But you have to think, even though it may seem like, oh, it's one night bad sleep and stuff, a lot of cells are going to be made when you sleep for one single night in every single part of your body. And cells do die off quite quickly. I think it's red blood cells die off after like 40 days or something. That's quite short considering how much you may have thought cells live for. You may have thought that you like kind of live with a lot of the cells, but you essentially become a new person, meaning you have entirely new cells after around 7 years of your life. You are essentially a whole new person, which is quite interesting. And your gut lining replaces itself like every 7 days, which is mad when you think about it. So if you had a week's bad night's sleep, your gut is just going to be like screaming and crying because it wants to change its cells, but it can't because it's not actually asleep. So it's basically, you will go insane and you will have serious health deficits if you didn't sleep for a week. Now, I kind of understand where there will be a sort of one night where you want to sort of get something out the window. You want to do this and get something finished, and you have a late night because of it. But consistent late nights don't make sense to me when you are going to bed at like 5, 3 every single day. Now, the third biological sleep benefit is that you will have an optimal mood and a regulated mood. When you are sleep deprived, the opposite occurs and you are mood sort of dysregulated, and you will have mood swings more often. You'll be cranky and grumpy, and you'll not be very nice to other people. You are more likely to suffer from stress, depression, and anxiety because all your neurotransmitters are absolutely in the bin because you've been awake for so long. Your brain just needs some rest, but it's continuing to be stimulated. Your body is running low on neurotransmitters, and it's just going to cause these mood swings when you're actually in a period of sleep deprivation after you've had like a consistent amount of bad night sleep. Like, it's not going to happen after one night, admittedly, but consistent bad night sleeps are really probably one of the worst things that you could possibly do for your body, like in general, like more than eating a bad diet for one day, more than sort of scrolling on Instagram and playing video games for 12 hours straight. I reckon like having consistently bad sleep for like more than 5 days is definitely worse than that. Now, all your neurotransmitter replacement and production of general chemicals happens during REM sleep. Rapid eye movement sleep is when your brain is actually almost equally awake as it is asleep, but your muscles are paralyzed so that you don't actually act out some of the vivid things that you will see during REM sleep, which are known as dreams. It's a very interesting thing. Molecules such as testosterone and estrogen and like probably the neurotransmitters that I've mentioned are all made during REM sleep. Things like cholesterol as well, they're all made during REM sleep. So not having REM sleep, which is the more likely thing to happen if you don't sleep enough, because REM sleep happens later on in your sort of sleep cycle, that's causing a serious detriment. So if you're getting 3 hours of sleep a night, there's a high chance that you will get no REM sleep, which is a big worry. And part of me thinks that maybe your body actually does sort of decide that we're not going to get any non-REM sleep and we're going to just like go straight into REM sleep. I think that does happen sometimes, especially if you're going to nap. Sometimes you can have vivid dreams and stuff when you just have a half an hour long nap. So maybe your body has some kind of way of dealing with that, but clearly you can see that it's not an optimal thing to do whatsoever. The fourth thing is that growth hormone is released while you sleep. I can't remember which one. I think it's, again, REM sleep. I remember when I was a very young child, I genuinely thought that the way that you got taller you were almost like split in half during sleep, and then you'd have a little bit of flesh and body added through into that gap, and then you end up being like a whole inch taller once you woke up from your sleep. And that was when I was like 6 or 7, but in reality, growth hormone is released when you sleep, and that's why when people say that, oh, you are growing when you are sleeping, it's completely correct. And the same thing applies to the gym. You will build muscle not when you're bench pressing, but when you are asleep, when the muscles are actually able to repair themselves because you're not so stimulated and you're able to relax. So to anyone that may be struggling in the gym that doesn't actually get much sleep because of maybe they're studying, maybe they're working, and it's very easy and actionable for them to start getting more sleep tonight, I highly recommend doing so. But with that, I recommend subscribing for more content like this, and have a good day.